Hey, thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Health Moment. I'm your host, Dr. Fitness, and as always, we're going to discuss all things holistic health and wellness. And it will be no different than last time, but I'm really excited. The thing that's really different is we get to speak with Linn Rivers, and we're going to discuss, well, here we go. If you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or any other chronic challenge, you're not alone. 70% of Americans over 45 are being treated for a chronic health condition. And guest is going to show, or our guest is going to share information about functional medicine and what separates functional medicine from traditional mainstream medicine. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, McGowan Rehabilitation Center. If you've been in a car accident, it can be physically and mentally traumatic. At McGowan Spinal Rehabilitation Center, you get first-rate care with the latest equipment for your physical trauma, but their kind and caring staff also rehabilitate your mental trauma. So there is severe mental trauma from accidents. And if you'd like more information, call them at 904-350-5544. That's 904-350-5544. Now, our guest, Linn, has been in the holistic health field and the coaching world since 2008. So she has a lot of experience. Now, Linn is a health and wellness expert and educator who assists people all around the world. And, you must be traveling a lot, Linn. And it's really great to be able to assist people in all those different places. But, Linn, how about we start with you introducing yourself and, telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey into functional medicine?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me on the show. I'm super excited to be here with you. And my journey started off very tumultuous. I had pneumonia when I was 1 and 3, which I was in incubators. They had my arms tied down. That turned into childhood asthma, which I was always in and out of the hospital for. And being on steroids and a lot of antibiotics as a kid really wrecked my gut microbiome, which then in turn caused a lot of other issues, including hormonal disturbances, and the list went on. And I ended up with chronic depression, chronic fatigue, all of these different symptoms. I was down to eating 2 foods at one point because my body just didn't want to process anything. I had multiple near-death experiences from my body just not functioning properly. And it just got to the point where all of my all of what I went through and my family, the majority of them died before I was 15. And the rest of them followed with other forms of dis-ease of some form. And so, with all of that being said, I really took that on and I started as early as I could to understand the human body and why are we getting so sick? Why did my family die from all of these? Why was I not healing? Why wasn't I getting better? And while I started very early on, I was more like 18 when I started the journey of nutrition and understanding diet and how it relates to illness. But it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I really started diving into functional medicine to understand finding the root cause of illness. Why are we actually getting sick, and not just using food as like another band-aid, if you will, to try to fix the symptoms, but to find the root cause of illness. Why are so many people getting sick? Not just myself, but as a whole. Why are 50% of Americans at this point either diabetic or pre-diabetic, right? I wanted to get to the bottom of it. So that started me on a deep dive of understanding functional medicine, finding the root cause, and really healing myself on a level that was profound. I mean, I got to the point several years ago where I almost had a heart attack from throwing a frisbee once, and I was pre-diabetic, and I just had so much going on that where I'm at today, it's because I did my studies, I did my research, I did my schooling, and I found, the answers. I found the bigger pieces as to why we're getting sick. And now it's my passion to share this and creating courses so everyone has access to it. So that's a bit about me, where I'm at and what I'm doing.
I mean, that's a fascinating journey. And you were talking about kind of how you took ownership of your care. Am I hearing the message that um, were you in traditional medicine, getting traditional treatment when you were finding out that you were pre-diabetic? Um, what was your experience with the traditional medical sources that you felt, hey,
Hmm.
I need to seek other methods to really come to get a better understanding of what's bringing this on. Um, what's the origin of this for me? Was
Yes.
that
So
your experience? Did you first try traditional medicine and then switch, or what was that journey like for you? From, or did you never have the experience really with traditional medicine?
oh no, I did. It's the reason that I'm no longer, it was the reason that I switched out. And it was because my entire childhood, I was on some form of medication and being told that I was always going to have asthma my entire life, that it's not something that goes away, right? And all of these different things. And I think the boiling point for me was one, seeing my family go through the traditional medical system, Western medical system, and always
Oh
getting
yeah,
worse.
okay.
And the words that the doctors used to my family of, you're not going to get better, this is just going to keep progressing, this is going to get worse, there's nothing you can do. And that alone, at 15, to hear that my mom's dying and there's nothing that they can do, that alone, I think, planted a seed. But then it was when I was 17 and the internet just came out. And so I had the dial up service. I remember the AOL. I just remember listening to it while I was trying to figure everything else out. And I had kept going to the doctor I was on so many medications for antidepressants at that time. And I was using antibiotics and ointments for certain conditions that weren't going away. I mean, it was just like a reoccurring thing. And there was a point that just clicked where the doctor, she gave me the same antibiotic cream and said, okay, here you go. And I was just like, there has to be a way to get rid of this. Like, this is not normal. My body should not be having this time and time again. And so I got online, and it took me a long time for everything to load, but I searched. I said natural treatment for XYZ. And I mean, at that point, there was barely any information on there. However, there was enough for me to find a solution that someone had wrote about. And I was like, you know what? I'm not getting better the other way, so let me give this a shot. And sure enough, this one simple solution literally completely got rid of what I was going through, and it never came back. And that for me was the point where
Wow.
I got off of all medications and didn't go back to the doctor. And I started diving into the extent of research and natural medicine and all of the above to start my own healing journey, which took a long time, but I did it.
See, that's pretty fascinating. It's that moment where you realize that there has to be another way, and
Yes.
and then you started diving into it. Um, you've come a long way. I mean, you have clients, you have a huge coaching platform. So you discovered a need. Where what's the journey look like for you next?
So my journey at this moment is the onward trajectory of where I see myself continue going. And I am in the creation of a platform right now where people can go and learn everything that they need to about the human body and how to heal mind, body, and spirit, where they get all the information that they need that they are not getting in society. Not definitely not from their Western medical system, but also not in their educational practices. And I'm doing it in a course format because I was charging my clients $3,000 to get this information because of all the testing involved in it. But there is another way to do this where everyone has access to this. And right now I'm in pre-launch with this course, and it's called Chronic Illness to Vibrant Wellness. And the pre-launch price is $50 because I want everyone to have access to this information, not just the people who can afford this. Because unfortunately, if you want to get better, insurance is not going to cover it. So people need to have access to something where they can get the information about why they're sick and how to get better. And then that way they can choose to take responsibility for their own health, right? That's the thing. I can give them all the information, but it's up to them to actually take that information and do something with it. So I created this course, and I'm creating more courses that will help people heal, genuinely heal.
Oh,
We
that's
really need this.
and so if I could pick your brain a little bit about some things that are in the course, for the listeners that have diabetes, is there a tip that you can give them to help them, get off all the medicine that they're taking? Is there one or two tips that you're open to share?
Yeah, the biggest tip is to lower your carb intake. Our bodies are not designed to have those extreme insulin spikes, and it happens every time you overload on carbs. And I mean, our society eats over 500 plus carbs a day easily, is the majority of the population. And for a comparison, I eat 20 carbs a day, right? So I'm on a very low carb diet because that is where my body does best. However, as a whole, we should not be eating as many carbs as we do in this world. In general, our body's not meant to process them that way. And so what it does is it causes your insulin to spike. And those insulin spikes are what causes, it's linked to over 98% of dis-ease is from insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is the key to so many different problems. And yes, there's a lot of other practices that go into that as well, and understanding certain foods. And, there's so much more to it. But one of the best things that you could do for yourself right off the bat is to lower your carb intake and increase better sources of protein and higher fat while making sure you're able to absorb these processes. But doing that alone, people can really shift their lives so drastically just with one little part of that. And so that's my biggest tip for people who have diabetes or are pre-diabetic.
That's a great tip. And I'd like to share with people, hey, before you really take any of our advices, make sure you check with your primary care physician first, because it's really important to do that. You could have some underlying thing that we're not aware of. So it's really important that you check with your primary care. But that being said, I've actually seen people get off of insulin, type 2 diabetics get off of insulin too. But it's interesting because I've learned when you're making that shift and you want to make that shift, be sure to have a way that you can track your blood sugar, because so many people do it in a way that they think they're doing it correct, but they're not. And I think it's really important that you work with a coach and someone who is very familiar with what you want to accomplish, because knowing what that blood sugar is on a pretty constant basis is going to be essential when you're shifting from medicine to off medicine.
Yes.
Because your traditional doctor is not going to believe you when you say you're not going to take medicine because you're going to do things right, and you're not going to need it anymore. They're not going to believe you because they believe that if you put yourself in a situation where you're already a diabetic, chances of you changing that are slim to none. And so their first thought for you is going to be, well, that's not going to happen. So when you say it, hey, I heard from this really great motivational person, Lynn, that I just need to reduce my carbs and I'll be fine. So reducing your carbs is really essential, like Lynn explained, but having a way to make sure you're doing it safe is also going to be important. And I recommend that you have your doctor get you one of those wearable blood glucose checkers, okay? Because most people are not going to poke their fingers enough to keep a running blood sugar tally to actually make that transition from uh, being diabetic to not being diabetic. Um, and your doctor won't believe you unless you give him the numbers, you know? So I recommend that you share your blood sugar numbers, and we're talking 8, 9 times a day, and share what you're eating with your primary so that they know you're serious about the change, and they'll see that you're one of the people that will actually be successful, because millions of people try and fail. And so they lose the confidence in people. And so you really have to document that journey from being diabetic to not being diabetic. And I feel that's how you can transition better away from medicine with your primary team. But functional medicine, I think, is really important, and taking ownership of what you're doing with your health, I think, is key. And I think so many people in mainstream medicine just don't take ownership of their health. So for you, Linn, I mean, that transition from being pre-diabetic to not diabetic at all, it's really awesome to be able to have accomplished that. Um, uh, did you find that you have sugar cravings? What was that journey like for you, switching from being pre-diabetic to diabetic? What did you learn about the foods that you needed? And how did you know that the new foods that you were eating were affecting your blood sugar in the right way? Because most pre-diabetics aren't regularly checking their blood sugar.
Right. And so I think for myself, my journey came down to life or death. You know, I was constantly like really, really sick and almost dying twice from my body just not functioning properly. I think I did get pushed to the brink where it was like, I need to take care of myself. Like, there's no question. I need to figure out. It's not that I was eating really unhealthy, is what it looked like. I wasn't just eating like packaged food or Cinnabon or McDonald's or any of these things. I was eating whole foods, but not realizing how those whole foods affect you. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't really understand what it means to eat healthy, right? And that's what we're learning. We're finally understanding, like, what does a human body actually need? And so for myself, it was a journey of feeling not good. And it started getting to the point where I had the numbness in my fingers and the tingling and pinpoint, feelings in my toes. And that's where I was like, oh, something's not right. And I was eating a lot of fruit at the time. I mean, like a lot of just like fruit. And the reality is, I want to touch on that really quick, is that we were never meant to overeat anything of one quantity in large quantities. Like, we have access to all these different foods now because of importation and massive growth, but our bodies weren't meant to consume like 3-4 cups of fruit in one setting. And we tend to do that. We tend to do that with certain vegetables too, which have their own properties that those chemical compounds actually really create an imbalance in our system. And so I was doing that. I was overeating so many different things that just kept spiking my blood sugars. And it really just came down to me going on an elimination diet and being willing to go on an elimination diet and really come back. I was at a carnivore diet mostly. So that way my body could really
Mhm.
center, really just clear out and no inflammation, and then slowly start adding things back in small quantities to see what was setting my body off. And so it was a process where I'm
Okay.
willing to do. I'm willing to take those steps because it's my body and it's what's getting me through this life. So it's important to me to know my body and what it needs. And so I did. I took the long road of just like diving deep and letting go of everything and not finding excuses. It was very much like, hey, I need to do this if I want to live a happy and healthy life.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Um, and uh, when it comes to high blood pressure, um, was that in part of your experience?
At certain points, yes, it was. Um, excuse me. I definitely there are certain things that were actually causing my body to be imbalanced, and the high blood pressure came from
Mhm.
salicylates in food, not even necessarily the carb intake at the time, but my gut was so dysbiotic that I couldn't absorb any nutrients from plant foods. And so those were causing my blood pressure to rise so much that even though I looked fit and healthy, climbing upstairs, I'm not talking about being winded. I'm talking about I had to stop before I passed out because I felt so unwell. It was like my heart was about to beat out of the chest and I had so much pressure in my head. And there I was thinking like, oh, this must be from this food. And turns out it was actually from plant-based foods that I was just overloading my body with and causing high blood pressure and a lot of heart palpitations and a slew of other symptoms.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, that is crazy. I had no idea the connection of even plant-based foods.
most people
Um,
don't. Yeah.
uh, can you give us an example of some plant-based foods that tend to spike blood pressure
So
that you
salicylates.
learned
So
about?
salicylates are a chemical compound in the plant, and they have oxalates, salicylates, and other chemicals that they have as their protection to not be eaten, right? And if you eat them in too
What
large of
plants are
quantities,
those?
the majority of plant-based foods have high salicylates. And so like the highest would be
Is
something
there a
like
particular plant that I should be?
so zucchini or yeah,
Is there?
zucchinis are very high,
Okay.
and their
Okay.
olives are extremely high. Cilantro, mint, those kinds of all the herbs are extremely high in salicylates. And this is why herbal medications, a lot of people can tend to feel worse on them because if their body can't process them because of a dysbiotic gut, those seep into your bloodstream and cause so many different things. In fact, salicylates are directly linked to autism. They're directly linked to asthma, which I had as a kid, and I was eating watermelon and all of these other high salicylate foods. And so those little things that you don't know about, people don't know this, which is why I'm sharing this information. Because if your body's
Oh,
not absorbing the
absolutely.
nutrients
How is
in the gut,
salicylate spelled?
it's
Yeah, because I
SALICYLATES.
mean, gut. Okay. That would be something I think people would really want to know about. What foods have salicylates, and 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 try to maybe remove some of them and see if it impacts your blood pressure.
Blood
That's
pressure and
awesome.
the
And so you have
actually
this
aggression
information and
too.
tons of information like this. I'm sorry. It hypes aggression.
Yeah, so it actually causes immediate aggression after eating. So if you have a child or you yourself recognize like a irritability or an aggression after eating about between like 10 to 30 minutes after eating, that is a salicylate reaction. And tinnitus comes from salicylates.
Oh.
Mhm.
So that information is in your course
One of the very many
and
pieces,
tons of
yes.
information. Oh, yes. So that information and more. So there is a lot of really powerful information in the course because trust me,
Yes.
um, I had no idea that, you know, the herbs could literally be impacting your blood pressure. So that's like really a great nugget to take away. So definitely, if you have high blood pressure, doing a little more research in that area might be really helpful. And a Linn Rivers course might be something that you would really do great things for you. So Linn, you got me interested in taking your course. That's for sure. That's a great nugget.
Yeah, I mean,
Mm,
I've had to dive into the
wow.
pieces that a lot of people don't typically dive into because I had to uncover so much for myself and my clients. And the as an independent researcher, you dive into the things that people are not talking about.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Um, where it comes to mental health and stress, I mean, you touched on salicylates impact your mental, I mean, your make you angry. So that seems to have an impact on um, your mental health. What are your thoughts? Is there, uh, you know, is there something that you would recommend for that? What's your thoughts in and around mental health and nutrition and activities in functional medicine?
So again, I go into this in full depth. Actually, there is a complete section for mental health and nutrition and all of the above in my course,
Okay.
because salicylates, for example, yes, they are linked to aggressive behavior. And for myself, I spent the majority of my teens and 20s in a really irritable, aggressive space, not knowing this. I removed the salicylates from my diet. Yes, I was willing to go extreme because it was bad. It was really bad. Like I felt like irritable in everything in life. And the second I took those out, I became a completely different person. It literally went from A to Z because
Wow.
and then I was like, this is how I'm supposed to feel regularly. And they can be linked to depression as well, like chronic depression. And so it's like plant compounds, if our body is not able to break them down, it is linked to so many different mental disorders. Like I said, salicylates and autism is directly correlated, and oxalates have a play in all of it too. And the for myself, the depression, I would get into the deepest depressive modes. I mean, I was suicidal for a good chunk of my 20s, where I just didn't want to be here anymore. Like I was certain I did not want to continue doing this life because I was constantly in that space. And when I lowered my, I stopped spiking my insulin so much, I stopped having the depressive episodes. I was one of those people who was on antidepressants a big chunk of my teenage years, and uh, I I'm not a person who would ever go on a medication again unless it was like a dire situation. But I went through the roller coaster rides with it so I could find out what's actually helping me with my diet and what's not. And now I am completely even kill. Even when I'm on a hormonal roller coaster with my hormones, like during my period, I don't get the PMS symptoms. I don't have those depressive modes anymore. Where before I would be in my room crying for days because everything was just so out of balance. And now it's like I am living proof that what we put in our bodies affects us immensely. And the thing is, we're just not aware of what's actually causing those symptoms in the first place, which is what I am bringing to awareness.
Oh, that's fantastic. For all our listeners who want information on your new functional medicine course that you've created, um, what can they do? What should they do?
So you go to my website, www.linnrivers.com, and it's LINN rivers.com. And there is a link directly to the course, and it's a walkthrough. I have a video on there talking about the course, and you can walk through and look at a good chunk of things that are in the course and what you'll learn. And it's a small portion of what I show in the course. And you can learn more about why I'm doing the course and whatever you want, and you can actually enroll directly through there. And like I said, for the pre-launch special, it's $50. So it's literally a no excuse price for people to learn something about their health. Even if they take one thing away from it, it is worth that price.
Yeah, I find all too often people don't realize how important it is to actually invest in their health.
Mm,
In ways like this, particularly with functional medicine, because the system that's set up with our medical care doesn't like paying for preventative medicine, really.
no.
Um, and it takes it on, it's important that we take on that role of, being mindful about preventing health challenges for ourselves.
Yes.
And so doing courses like this, I feel are really helpful. And I'm always seeking out, I'm always seeking out new information that's going to allow me to be more proactive when it comes to my health, and then help other people be more proactive with theirs. So this is definitely an opportunity to do that. So taking Linn Rivers' course will give you an opportunity to learn a lot more about how you can be more proactive with your life. So if you want that, I suggest that you check out her webpage. And Lynn, what's the webpage again?
www.linnrivers.com. Linn rivers.com.
Oh man. Hey, Lynn, if there was a specific question that you would have liked me to ask that I just didn't, what would it be and what would be your answer?
That's a good question. I don't know that there is anything that for me, it's mostly about getting the knowledge of chronic illness out there, right? And I guess maybe
Mm-hmm.
let me look at it this way. If you had asked me, what do I think people need to do for themselves more? Is to take responsibility for their
Mm-hmm.
entire existence. They are the creator of their reality, and it's time for them to step into it and stop accepting the truth of everyone else around them, especially their doctors in the Western medical system, because they are not set up to help people get better. They're set up to continue the progression of the illness and just medicating. And so it's really important that when you go into the doctor, you need to make sure that you're finding someone who's going to be on the journey with you of integrative approaches and willing to walk you through the process of, I'm going to take these steps in a natural form, and I just want you to be by my side so you can help me through this. If your doctor does not agree with that, find a new doctor, because it's so important to have someone who's going
Wow,
to help you through that journey.
that's fantastic. Lynn Rivers, hey, thank you for joining us today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Your Health Moment. I look forward to talking to you again next week. Take care and bye for now.